Thank you, Pastor, for the introduction and for the prayer. And good morning and happy Sabbath, everyone. It's a beautiful day. Even though it is cold and freezing, it's still nice to see the snow and the sun and feel that cold wind. It's rejuvenating, it's reviving. I like waking up and getting that little jolt of cold air when you step out of the house. As the pastor introduced, and as he said, if you have any questions, if you have any comments, whether it be through Facebook Live or whether it be through our live stream service on the internet, click in there, say hi, say good morning, say happy Sabbath, post your questions, post your comments. If you have anything, hopefully under the guidance of the Holy Spirit, we can also answer those questions and not only taught but also learn as we go along. We are on lesson number 12. And the title is Sabbath Experiencing and Living the Character of God. And we oftentimes don't think of the Sabbath as an educational experience. We oftentimes think of it as a lot of times as a list of do's and don'ts. What things should we do? What things can we do? What things can't we do on the Sabbath? And we look at the Sabbath from a biblical perspective, and we study the Sabbath in the Bible. And oftentimes we stray away from what the original intention was for the Sabbath, and we study it from Genesis to Revelation, and we do know that the Sabbath is important. And oftentimes if you study the way the Jewish nation kept the Sabbath, and then you study now the way Seventh-day Adventists keep the Sabbath, and then you compare it to the biblical Sabbaths, and there's a little bit of difference. It can be hills and valleys, it can be mountains and chasms. So I oftentimes too, and I wonder, because there's no two Adventists that keep the Sabbath the same way. All of us have our own little, I would even say almost like little tics or quirks about the Sabbath. Some things that we like to do and some things that we don't like to do, and we oftentimes look at others when we see things like that. Sister Mangela, you have a question or comment? The gray mic, please.
Be interesting to know how the Jews of this day keep the Sabbath, if you know.
What's that?
It'll be interesting to know how the Jews of this day keep the Sabbath.
Yeah, within the Jewish community itself, there's so many sects and different. You have your Hasidic Jews, you have your different types of Jews that keep the Sabbath and they have oftentimes a list of do's and don'ts. And we do know that there's one of the reasons that Jesus came to the earth was to in fact, do away with a lot of the restrictions that the Jews had placed on the Sabbath, because it had gotten so far away from what God's original intent was for the Sabbath. As I was studying in the Teacher's Quarterly, it says that in the four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, there are 89 chapters total, okay? So out of those 89 chapters, there are 11 instances where Jesus is explaining his understanding of what the Sabbath should be. So 1 out of every 8 chapters in those 4 Gospels deals with the Sabbath. So when we look at Jesus and the reason, it's interesting too when you study it that the healings that Jesus did on the Sabbath, that there's 7 instances of him healing people on the Sabbath. And one of the things that the Jews most condemned him for was him breaking the Sabbath. Here he was the Lord of the Sabbath, the one who created the Sabbath, being persecuted for breaking it, which it's quite interesting, but the way that Jesus came, he said, I have not come to destroy the law, but to fulfill it. And he wanted to demonstrate to the Jews exactly what the Sabbath was supposed to be. In healing, he said that the Sabbath was made for relieving suffering, that it was okay, that in many times, and in one particular instance, he condemns the Jews of that time because they were hypocritical. They would go in and rescue the lamb that fell into the pit and jump down there and do whatever it took to take that lamb out of there, which could have possibly be construed as work. But yet here there was a human being that needed healing, and they condemned him for healing on the Sabbath. So it's interesting when you study those instances of Jesus and how he tried to bring things back. I always view things as a pendulum. You look at the pendulum and it swings far to the left one way or far to the right the other way, and Jesus wanted to bring things back to the center. I think that's a biblical principle that we have in Paul. Or oftentimes, let your moderation be known. Everything should be in the middle. We don't want to swing too far to the right or too far to the left on anything, because oftentimes that is not what God's ideal is. So, experiencing and living the character of God. When we talk about the Sabbath, this is exactly what the Sabbath is supposed to be, about experiencing and living God's character. The opening lesson on Sabbath afternoon talks about, and our scripture reading is taken from Mark chapter 2, verses 27 and 28. And he said to them, the Sabbath was made for man, and not man for the Sabbath. Therefore, the Son of Man is also Lord of the Sabbath. And it's interesting because when you go back to Genesis and you go back to the creation story, the sixth day, man was created. The seventh day, the Sabbath was created. So the Sabbath was made for man, not in reverse order. God didn't make the Sabbath first and then say, okay, let's make a man to honor the Sabbath. It was man created first, and then the Sabbath was to be a blessing for the man. So in Jesus quoting that passage, and in him stating that, it was to readjust the scribes and the Pharisees' thinking. It opens up with a story about a woman who studied with a friend on Friday nights, and then it says that she suddenly realized that over the 4 Friday nights she had experienced something new in her Christian experience. She had grown, learned more of her God, and deepened her faith. Sabbath had been an opportunity for education and personal development. It's an interesting story about how we can think of the Sabbath as not just a day of rest, but as a means of education as well. Oftentimes we forget that we think of the Sabbath as worship, we think of the Sabbath as rest, but it's also a day of education. One of the things that I most enjoyed when I first became a Seventh-day Adventist was exactly what I'm doing now, Sabbath school. I always loved Sabbath school, and not to take anything away from sermons, and sermons have their place in terms of bringing worship to the congregation, and it's an important part of worship, but Sabbath school was where I learned the most, to be quite honest, because you had that interaction, that question, that answer, and you could actually ask questions. And even in the beginning, going through my Bible studies when I was converting over to Adventism, the Q&A is what really gets you to learn, and that's the Socratic method. That's the way people learn the most. So sermons have their place, but in terms of Sabbath school, and when we spend that time together in fellowship and asking questions and sharing ideas, I think that's definitely the way. Yes, Sister Mangela, agree, Mike again.
Sermons are great, but you are a passive learner. But Sabbath school is your active learner. You are searching yourself. You are reading the Bible. You are looking into things. So this is active learning. That is passive education, passive learning.
Yeah, and one of the things I love about the Seventh-day Adventist Church as a denomination is that you can go to any church in the whole entire world, and they're all at the same time will be studying the same Sabbath school lesson, talking about the same subject. So I think that it's the way God intended. I think that there should be unity. There should be a cohesiveness. There should be all of us on the same page at the same time. And I think that's what heaven's going to be like. When we look at certain Bible texts that say that from one Sabbath to another, from one new moon to another, we will all gather and worship. It will be what the whole universe, okay, will have the heartbeat of one heart. We will all be in unison, and that's the way God intended it. That was the way God had originally designed it. So humankind has been enjoying the Sabbath since creation, and will keep it for all eternity. Genesis 2:1. Thus the heavens and the earth and all the host of them were finished. And on the seventh day God ended his work which he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had done. Then God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because in it he rested from all his work which God had created and made. Now here's a question. Why did God rest? Was he tired?
No.
I mean, 6 days of creation, that's a lot of work, isn't it?
No, it's not a lot of
Mentally draining, perhaps, just a time to recharge his batteries, perhaps, maybe. Mangela, I see you say you're shaking your head no. Do you have a comment with that? Go ahead.
God is the creator. He is the source of energy. He never rests.
Mm-hmm.
It is meant for us. The Sabbath is meant for us. He did everything, and he was satisfied with everything that he did. And the creation ended, but he wasn't tired.
Yeah.
And he never will be tired.
I like the way Sister White talks about him resting, and the question is asked, did God rest because he was tired? He rested not as one weary, but as well pleased with the fruits of his wisdom and goodness and the manifestations of his glory. You think, why did he rest? He left an example for man. He didn't need to rest. The Bible also says in another place in Psalm 121 verse 4, "Behold, he who keeps Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep." He doesn't need rest, okay? He's an eternal God that is always working. Jesus said, "My Father works hereunto, and so do I." So we see humankind will be keeping the Sabbath. Isaiah 66:22 says, "For as the new heavens and the new earth, which I will make, shall remain before me, says the Lord, so shall your descendants and your name remain. And it shall come to pass that from one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another, all flesh shall come to worship before me, says the Lord." So we see that there's clear Bible text that says that the Sabbath will be kept in the heaven made new. The Sabbath will be kept for all eternity because it is a perpetual memorial, okay, that God is the one who sanctifies us and created us. It's a memorial of creation. So it's a monument in time. It's a milestone in the path that reminds us where we came from, where we are, and where we're going to. I love that the Sabbath still, to this day, stands as that memorial to creation. So throughout the week, Sunday's lesson was entitled, we think of the Sabbath as different things, but for the purposes of this lesson, Sunday's lesson was entitled, "The Sabbath is a time to be astonished." Monday's lesson, a time for rediscovery, a time for learning priorities, time for finding balance, and then Thursday, a time for community. And we think of all those things wrapped up into the Sabbath. Yes, Mrs. Mangum. Blue mic, please.
I think of the time when you're asking, like, was God tired? I think it's more also a time that he wants to spend with us. I remember my grandfather, he didn't work, so he was never tired, right? After he retired. But usually, we always, every week, he asked that we would come for one day, and that was usually like on Sunday in the evening, and he said, on that day, you guys are, so all the sons and daughters, the grandkids would come just to, have a relationship there and to have fellowship and mingle. So none of us were working, but it was more of relation kind of, activity. So none of us were, exhausted, that we were just sleeping, but we were relating to my grandfather. And that's what I think God, when he said, like you said, he rested. It's like after you clean your house and did everything else and you sit, sometimes, not necessarily every time you're tired, but you look back and say, wow, I did all of this. This is so good,
Yeah, and we sometimes, like even after the snowstorm, most of us probably went out and started shoveling, and my back is still hurting from that shoveling. I need that rest. But we think of a God who can just speak the word into existence, that has that power in that word. He doesn't need rest, It doesn't. It's that Sabbath time that he wants to spend. It's that one-on-one time. It's that close relationship. And even with each other, it's a time for community. It's a time for, and that's one of the hardest things about this pandemic. It really is. It really, really is. Because we're told to keep 6 foot distance. It's unnatural to not hug someone and to kiss someone, especially in my culture. It's a natural thing to want to hug and kiss someone. It's very difficult now with this pandemic, and we're separated, and we're doing things virtually, and it's difficult, and it's against what God intended. And I think in the Sabbath sense too, it's called a holy convocation. We are to come together and gather together, where 2 or 3 are gathered together, and it can still be done virtually, I believe, but that God is not limited by that distance or time, but it's something missing, it's definitely not the same, but hopefully soon, we'll get back to those days where we can be in person. But yeah, the Sabbath is that memorial, and someone I heard this on one of the commentaries as I was studying, that someone said that the Sabbath is a holy day, not a holiday. And I thought about that, and I says, now that we're in this holiday season, and as I've shared with you before, my favorite holiday is Thanksgiving, because of that community, that you sit at a table, you have dinner, you talk, you put the phones away, you put the TV off, you talk and you share things, and you're sharing a meal together, and you get together with family and friends and loved ones, and Christmas the same thing. You're gathering together, you're exchanging gifts, you're remembering Christ's birth. What if we thought of the Sabbath as a holiday rather than a holy day, right? Every week we have a holiday that we can, and that word holiday actually means holy day in its original intent. So if you think of the Sabbath as a holiday, a day that's special, a day that we can make it like Christmas, make it like Thanksgiving. We get together, we share a meal together, we talk, we exchange ideas, we talk about that week's sermon, we talk about the Sabbath school, we talk about different things and spiritual things, and we stay focused and meditated. And it won't seem like a burden. That 24 hours will pass like that, before you know it, like, oh my, the Sabbath is over already, but I don't want it to be over. I want to continue, And that's the way I think God intended it. So yes, Elder Diane.
Sister White, she says, if Sabbath has kept universally, man's thoughts and affections would have been led to the Creator as an object. There is no idolatry or atheist in this world.
Yeah, if the Sabbath had been kept as a memorial of creation, there wouldn't be atheists, there wouldn't be anything like that what we have today, if the Sabbath had been remembered as a memorial of creation. So think of the Sabbath as a time to be astonished. And you think of the first Sabbath, and I love the creation account that God creates Adam on the sixth day. He molds and fashions him, from the dust of the earth, breathes into him the breath of life, and Adam became a living soul. And he gave a job for Adam to do on that sixth day. He brings the animals to him, and Adam sees that the giraffe has. The male giraffe has his female giraffe. The male elephant has his female elephant, and on and on and on. And as God is giving him work to do to name the animals, he sees that these animals have helpmeets, but there's no one comparable to him. Where's my? And God, in his infinite wisdom, wanted that void there. He implanted it in him, and Adam realizes that there was no helpmeet for him. So God performs that first surgery. And when Adam wakes up and sees Eve for the first time, and God performs the first wedding ceremony, and then the Sabbath comes, right? So you see in his creation that the design and the order in which he does things, nothing is haphazard, nothing is done by circumstance or by willy-nilly, so to speak. It's done by design, and it's done in its order. One thing after the other, in its order, for a reason. And we see that, imagine Adam and Eve on that first Sabbath, and they're looking at the garden and studying the garden and seeing them, so much that they were learning, and Adam was not a baby that he needed to be taught how to walk, how to speak, how to do anything. He was already created as a fully grown man, but yet there was so much more that he needed to learn. And we think of the Sabbath as a time to be astonished. That imagine looking out at those hills and those valleys, and when you look at the creation story, you think of the variety that God used. He could have just made everything the same color, the same height, the same texture, the same smell. Give it the same smell. Give it everything the same taste. Only make one manner of fruit. Why make so many different manners of fruit? Why make them look different colors? And the variety that God uses. And you just look in our solar system, look at the planets. Look at Jupiter, look at Mercury, look at Pluto, look at Saturn, and they're all, and the Earth, and the Mars, and Venus. And look at how the variety that he uses and everything that he creates. And it's like a time to be astonished. Imagine being Adam and you're now, your mental acuity. He was perfect in symmetry. He was created in God's image. He was one with the Creator. That mental capability that he had, and Pastor Doug had said about even his visual acuity. We have 20/20 vision, and some people have better than 20/20 vision. Adam must have had almost like microscopic vision to be able to even see the atoms, maybe. Who knows? With the amount of size that our brain has, that we only use a small portion of it. Imagine if our entire brain was used, and the amount of mental acuity and physical acuity, and this is what sin has done to us. We are slowly degrading in all of this, and yet God's plan is to restore in us that original image. So yes, in the account creation we see, the account of creation ends with these words, Adam was quite busy on Friday. On the other hand, Eve only enjoyed some hours of Friday with her husband. But their first full day together was an especially blessed day. The Creator himself sanctified the seventh day with his presence. They learned more about the Creator and the creation around them. By the end of the day, they were invited to spend another full day with God on the next Sabbath, in addition to their daily evening meetings. So here we have God meeting with Adam and Eve, talking with them, meeting with them in the cool of the day, and discussing. And even the angels were there, and angels would come down and commune with Adam and Eve. So we see all of creation looking at this perfect beauty that God had created, and even the unfallen worlds looking at this beauty that God had created. It was something, definitely a time to be astonished. So we still receive the same invitation every Sabbath, an invitation to spend a full day learning about our wonderful Creator. And if we look at the Sabbath, like I said, not just as a holy day, but as a holiday and as a special time that we can spend with our Creator, our outlook and our experience, our Sabbath experience, will be much more blessed. So Monday's lesson was entitled, A Time for Rediscovery. Exodus 16:29, see, for the Lord has given you the Sabbath. Therefore he gives you on the sixth day bread for 2 days. Let every man remain in his place. Let no man go out his place on the seventh day. Now here's one argument that many people make, and they say, well, the Sabbath was created for the Jews. It was given to them at Mount Sinai, and we're not bound by it as Christians. But we do know that the Ten Commandments were given down in Exodus chapter 20. But here you have in Exodus 16, okay, God creates something that teaches the children of Israel about the Sabbath. Even when they were in Egypt, and Pharaoh used to have them working and building, making bricks and mortar and straw and using all that. And then Moses, when he came and told Pharaoh, let my people go, and Moses talked with the people, he started to institute the Sabbath even then. And at one point, Pharaoh says, you have your people resting when they shouldn't be resting. And then Pharaoh increased their workload and made them make bricks without straw for that reason. So God wanted, and his reason why he wanted his children, he told Pharaoh, let my people go that they may come and worship me. He wanted the worship. He wanted them to understand, return back to their original Creator. So when we look at the story about the manna in the wilderness, and the account is taken from Exodus chapter 16, verse 14. And when the layer of dew lifted, there on the surface of the wilderness was a small round substance as fine as frost on the ground. So when the children of Israel saw it, they said to one another, what is it? For they did not know what it was. And Moses said to them, this is the bread which the Lord has given you to eat. This is the thing which the Lord has commanded. Let every man gather it according to each one's need, 1 omer for each person, according to the number of persons. Let every man take for those who are in his tent. In verse 17 of Exodus 16, then the children of Israel did so and gathered some more, some less. So when they measured it by omers, he who gathered much had nothing left over, and he who gathered little had no lack. Every man had gathered according to each one's need. And Moses said, let no one leave any of it till the morning. They were not supposed to leave it out. They were supposed to gather everything that they needed. So as soon as God says that to them, and Moses says, God has said, let no one leave any of it to the morning, notwithstanding, they did not heed Moses, but some of them left part of it until the morning. And what happened to the manna when they left it there to the morning and they disobeyed God? It became worms, yes, very good. It became worms and it stank. They instantly, God told them, okay, the manna is falling from heaven. They didn't know what it was, and they saw it on the ground as frost. And when they didn't understand, they immediately started disobeying God. So then they had to learn an important lesson, so that when it bred worms and stank. And Moses was angry with them. So they gathered it every morning, every man according to his need. And when the sun became hot, it melted. And so it was on the sixth day that they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omers for each one, and all the rulers of the congregation came and told Moses. Then he said to them, this is what the Lord has said. Tomorrow is a Sabbath rest a holy Sabbath to the Lord. Bake what you will bake today, and boil what you will boil, and lay up for yourselves all that remains to be kept until morning. Now, he wanted an important lesson for them in the fact that he gave them bread each and every day. Every day they went out and they gathered. Now remember, they're in the wilderness, okay? Now they were used to the pots in Egypt, the leeks and the onions and the flesh pots of all the, the meat and the stews and the casseroles and whatever else they ate in Egypt. But here God was feeding them pure bread from heaven. Bread that they said that the angels also partake of. And manna still grows there. And yet, it was God's intent that they would, for 40 years, eat that same manna. Mangela, yes, you have a comment,
Yeah.
Gray Mike?
So remember, many, many years ago, when they were brought out of bondage from Egypt, they saw all the miracles that God did, and he provided for them. The Egyptians gave so much for them. God told, go and ask your neighbors, and they gave a lot. Still, these people were so greedy, they collected so much more than what they needed.
Yeah, and it's interesting because there is a lesson for us, and I've seen this passage used in a right way and in an incorrect way, because people, oftentimes many Adventists, where it says bake what you will bake and boil what you will boil, people take that to mean, well, you can't cook on the Sabbath. You can't do any cooking whatsoever. Using the microwave is a bad thing on the Sabbath, and lighting the fire under the gas stove is bad. So we need to be careful, and I think we oftentimes fall into the same pit that these children of Israel fell into. We hear these things and we misinterpret them and add more than what is written in Scripture. Yes, Pastor?
Yeah, when I was little, we had to take showers before Sabbath because Ellen White said don't take a shower on Sabbath. But again, it's understanding the context of that, because when Ellen White made the comment about not taking a shower or a bath, is actually what she said. They didn't have showers and bath in, is you had to go get wood, you had to fetch the water, you had to heat it all up, you had to carry it into the house, fill it up. It was a long process, not like what we do today where you step into a shower and in 5 minutes you can be done and be out. Right. And the same thing with cooking. You have to keep that in the context of today. You're right, a microwave, you push 2 buttons. Yes, and even the idea of trying to have your meals prepared before, where you don't have to spend hours in the kitchen cooking from scratch your pies and casseroles and everything. That's nice, and I think that's why Adventists have all the casseroles, is because you could do that on Friday and then just heat it up on Sabbath. And so the idea again is to keep it in context and understand that we're trying to have a relationship with Jesus, and he wants it to be where we're having time with him, not like Martha in the kitchen cooking the whole time.
Right, and that's the pitfall that the children of Israel had, is that they put so many restrictions on the Sabbath that the more list of don'ts than the do's that got them carried away. Yes?
Just another thing that I want to add.
We need a mic.
We don't go that far with the Sabbath and cooking and all that. We already have in our appliances the Sabbath mode, if you all noticed by now.
There's a Sabbath mode on an appliance?
Sabbath mode
Oh.
on the appliances, on the stoves, on the things that are Sabbath.
Let's just get you to repeat that question, because it's okay.
Well, but you can't hear you on.
Nobody online can hear what you're saying. Yeah, what Charles was saying was that basically that there's ways that we can, with regards, he's saying that there's a Sabbath setting on the appliance that you can also, but the biblical concepts, and when we study this story of God feeding the children manna, the important part of it, and people miss it, is that God wanted them to be dependent upon him for everything. He gave them that food every single day. And when we talk about manna, we're talking about bread from heaven. It's symbolic also. There's symbolism there, because Jesus is the word of life. The words that he speaks, they are truth and they are life. So he wanted us daily in communion, early in the morning, to go collect the manna, collect the word, and bring it home and use it. He wanted them to understand that the Sabbath was supposed to be set apart. It was not supposed to be like every other day. 6 days shall you work, but the 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord. In it you shall not do any work. Now, when we talk about the cooking and what the pastor said, you run into some pitfalls, because you don't want to be cooking, and you ladies, you do an excellent job with some of those meals that you prepare, and we don't we don't want you spending 3 hours in the kitchen cooking a meal. You know, that kind of takes away from that one-on-one time, that family fellowship that we're supposed to have. And then if you add that cooking, and then how do you get the dishes cleaned afterwards? And so now you're adding more hours onto. So yes, I think that the concept of preparing it the day before, that's why we have the preparation day, where we try to do as much as we can on the preparation day in order to make the Sabbath a day of rest, a day of fellowship, a day of family time together, and that's important. It's time with God and it's time with family to come beyond. Yes, I see a comment from the back. Make sure, yellow mic, please.
Hi everyone.
Is the mic on? Yellow? Green light?
Hi everyone. Can you tell me why in the Bible they said the Sabbath was made for man and not man for the Sabbath?
Yes, that was our scripture memory text. In the story of creation, we have God doing things in their order, okay? 6th day, he created man. The 7th day, he created the Sabbath, okay? He created it. He could have just let it go as any other day, but understanding that man needed to understand that we were going to need rest. We were going to need that time, okay? Because look at us, especially us as New Yorkers, right? We can relate to always being busy, always having something to do. It almost feels unnatural to sit around and do nothing, right? We want to keep going and going and going and going. And unless we take that time to pause, okay, put aside all the cares and worries of the world, put aside all the labor, put aside all the anger, the frustration that we deal with on a weekly basis, especially here in New York. I can't think of any place that we deal with it more than here. And you need that special time to reset, to spend time with the Lord. And we should be doing this on a daily basis anyway, but it's a special time where we want to put aside all that stuff. And when Jesus said that man was created for the Sabbath, it was exactly that the Sabbath was not made for man, that it was done in that order for that particular reason. He is Lord of the Sabbath, and the fact that they challenged him because of the things that he did on the Sabbath when his disciples plucked ears of corn and they began to eat from he had to challenge them with regards to the statements that they made. Yes, I see another hand. If we can get a mic, just hold on 1 second. Mic is coming. We want those online to hear.
Two points.
Okay.
One thing I learned in many years, 48 years now of being an Adventist, a Seventh-day Adventist, is that Sabbath prep can't all be done on the preparation day. You start thinking about the Sabbath as sunset tonight, as the sunset, at least to try to get your ideas and your thoughts into order in terms of how you're going to execute yet the next Sabbath.
Yes.
Trying to cram everything into the preparation day, actually, you're so exhausted at the end of the preparation day if you do that you almost can't enjoy your spiritual communion because you're so physically exhausted. Even though the Sabbath rest is intended for both physical rest and communion, you can't really enjoy your communion if you're physically absolutely exhausted. And then the other point, just to elaborate a little bit on the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. The Sabbath doesn't really need anything in and of itself. Just taking it in a very literal way. The Sabbath doesn't need us. We need a day of rest. And so if you want to take it in the most literal sense, God made a day because it will be to our benefit. And that's how I explain it. God made a day that will benefit the human race if we execute it in the way in which it was intended. To commune with our God, to reconnect with Him, and to reconnect with each other, and not be distracted by everything else that's going on around us.
Yes. Thank you for those comments. And exactly that. It's that we need to remember why the Sabbath was created. It is a memorial. It is a sign God said it is a sign between me and you, that I am it's him as acknowledging him as creator. We rest because we acknowledge that he created everything in 6 days and he rested. He gave for us an example, okay, that we should rest as he rested. Yes, Mrs. Mangum. Blue mic, please.
I agree with her on the preparation day, but I also think that if you leave, just because the name says preparation day, if you leave everything for that day, like she said, it will be exhausting.
Yeah.
And then by the time Sabbath comes, the day before, you have exhausted yourself trying to prepare for the Sabbath that you don't enjoy. So you should start on Sunday.
Yes.
So like even in our house, a lot, sometimes you say, we're not going to be shopping on Friday, so leave for Friday the little things that, it's not going to cause a lot of stress, but do your shopping, prepare for your food or whatever before. You don't have to leave everything for the last day.
Definitely, yes. Yes, Pastor.
I have a comment here. It says from Joanna. She said, Joanne, that's exactly what I was taught when I became an SDA. Start planning on Sunday.
Yeah, it should be, the Sabbath should be a special time. What day of the week should be your best meal, your most special meal? Sabbath. Prepare for it the whole week and say, well, my Sabbath meal is going to be something that I don't eat every other day, that I don't eat every day, that something that is going to, the Sabbath should be a delight. It should be the day that we're looking forward to throughout the whole week. Yes, Pastor.
In the Bible where it talks about the first day of the week, second day of the week, because they didn't have the names that we have today, like Sunday, Monday. So the first day of the week was actually in the context of first day of the week towards the Sabbath. Second day of the week towards the Sabbath. So as soon as Sabbath ends on Saturday night, the idea was you're looking forward to the next one. So that's why in the Bible you have first day, second day, third day. It was the third day towards the Sabbath. And then when you come to Friday, it was called the preparation day. And you see that in the Bible. We have the first day of the week, and we also have about the Friday preparation and then the Sabbath. And that's in the Jewish mind at the time. It was the first day of the week towards the Sabbath. And so you're right. We don't wait till 10 minutes before sundown on Friday night to try to get everything ready, or
Right.
you miss the blessing.
Yeah, and it's definitely something we also need to guard the fringes of the Sabbath. We don't want to be sitting there staring at the horizon, waiting for the sun to go down so that we can go do everything that we wanted to do, right? And come Friday, we're not sitting there scrambling around, get that last minute shopping because I got 2 inches of sunlight left, right? We stare at the sunlight and this is some of the things that we do, but Sister White says that angels are dispatched, going out, wanting to usher in the Sabbath with us Sabbath keepers. If we think about that there's a divine appointment, that angels are there ready to help us, ready to start singing those hymns with us, ready to join in our prayers, Think of those incense being offered up on the altar of God as Sabbath is drawing and you're bringing in the Sabbath. That's a special time. You don't want to miss out on that. You're missing a blessing when we don't guard the fringes of the Sabbath as well. Yes, Mrs. Mangum.
One more thing that there's actually James and I fell on that with Priscilla in the beginning, because a lot of times with our children we'll say, oh, it's the Sabbath, we can't do it.
Yes.
It's the Sabbath, we can't do it. Or the Sabbath's going to be here, you cannot do that. And one day Priscilla came to us and she goes, when is this day going to finish?
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah.
And she's like, I don't want to be Sabbath. My heart sunk. And then I told James, I said, we got to change. It can't be like that.
Yeah.
So we start separating toys. I learned that with his mom, that she played only on the Sabbath. Like you said, special food that was only for the Sabbath. So we visit church members and we went to people's house that they were not coming. So we changed completely. We start going on walks so we can say, look, we're spending time with God and his creation. So we changed that mentality that they would look forward instead of being a negative day. Because most of the time you say, I don't do this because of the Sabbath. So now I say, I don't do that because I want to rest.
Yeah.
It's different when you tell people, now I take that day to rest, and not, oh, I don't do that because of Sabbath.
Right.
It's a negative way
Right,
to
and
say.
I made those same mistakes, you know, and I'm sure if someone were to ask my kids what they felt of the Sabbath and when they were younger, but you start to learn and you start to grow and you start to learn from other people's examples. And, you know, I still remember like passing a playground and people saying, well, the kids can't use the playground on the Sabbath. They can't have fun. They can't enjoy themselves. They, you know, and they can't swim on the Sabbath. They can't do this. They can't do that. It's just a list of don'ts and can'ts. But you want to make it, and what they would remember is exactly that family time. You know, when you take them out and you go out in nature and you go for walks in the parks or bike rides, you know, I remember doing a lot of that with my kids and getting on a bike and riding through nature trails and things like that. And that's what they remember and that's what they're going to enjoy. Not the fact that you tell them, well, you can't do this. Give them things that they can look forward to. The Sabbath should be a special time. So back to the manna in the wilderness. After liberating them, God wanted them to rediscover the Sabbath. He wanted them to rediscover who He is, how much He loved them, and plans He had for them. He used the manna to teach them about the Sabbath. He sent twice the usual amount of manna on Friday and nothing at all on Sabbath. The manna that the people cooked on Friday was still good on Sabbath. However, the manna they tried to keep other days bred worms and stank. God is inviting us today to rediscover Him every Sabbath, to understand His character better, and to have a stronger relationship with Him. That's what the Sabbath is about. It's about relationships. It's about reconnecting with our Creator. The Sabbath is also a time for learning priorities. If you turn away your foot from the Sabbath, and this is another famous Adventist quote that a lot of Adventists use for good and use for bad as well. They oftentimes, because you're not supposed to find your own pleasure, that means anything that gives me delight I'm not supposed to do, which is kind of opposite of what the verse is saying. If you turn away your foot from the Sabbath, from doing your pleasure on my holy day, and call the Sabbath a delight, the holy day of the Lord, honorable, and shall honor Him, not doing your own ways, nor finding your own pleasure, nor speaking your own words, then you shall delight yourself in the Lord, and I will cause you to ride on the high hills of the earth, and feed you with the heritage of Jacob your father. The mouth of the Lord has spoken it. Again, another verse that people say, like, well, you know, anything that brings you pleasure, anything that you like to do is not good. You know, it's the Sabbath. It should be, I don't know, like they put so many, we should just be sitting at home and singing hymns all day or listening to sermons all day, when those things have their place. But the Sabbath should be a special moment. Even the clothing that we wear should be special. It should be, we're coming into the presence of God. We're spending that time with Him. If you were going to the president's White House to go meet him, whether it be the new or the old president, whatever, and you had a divine appointment that they said, okay, well, you know, you're going to have to get searched by Secret Service. Would you just wear whatever you wanted, knowing that you were going to meet the president? But here we are meeting the King of the universe, right? Sabbath should be special. We should have our best clothes for the Sabbath, the best meal for the Sabbath, anything that you can think of to make the Sabbath more pleasurable, the day to look forward to, and even for your children, do it. And that's what we need to keep that in mind in those biblical concepts. In Isaiah 58, God called His people to reconsider their priorities. They fasted and asked God to make them prosper. Here they were fasting, praying, and yet they were oppressing the poor. They were not taking care of their fellow neighbors. They were not doing the good things. I noticed also I'm running out of time, and I did not get very far. So time for learning priorities. I could just go on all day about the Sabbath, but thank you for your comments. Thank you for your questions, and we'll pick up next week. Is going to be the last lesson 13 for this quarter, and then I think the next quarter is going to be Isaiah, which I'm looking very forward to. I can't wait to get into that. That should be a blessing as well. God bless you. Continue to study. We'll pick up next week's lesson.